Welcome to Conscious Conversation with myself, Craig.
And Chet. This has been a while.
Yeah.
How long's it been?
I don't know. It must have been lockdown. Was the last one we did, right?
Around Christmas time. Yeah.
I remember doing it around there.
God, I miss those days back in when we used to record in random locations.
Yeah.
Trying to dodge the authority, recording places that we shouldn't be recording in.
At times not to be together, distanced apart.
Distance apart. God, we've gone through it all. But this is episode number 39. It's been a long time coming. We've tried to do this for the last couple of weeks, and it's just been on and off cancellations, disappointments, and how it is in most relationships, it seems. People's lives. But yeah, how you been, Craig?
Good, man. Yeah, good. In a new space.
We're shooting in a new space, but I guess the viewers are used to us changing locations. But this is now going to be the new Conscious Conversation hub. Craig's moved out into a new space, just down the road, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot more ambient, I would say, the vibe is here, compared to the other space where you've got windows all the way around and you've got beaming light coming in, or it'll just be darkness because of the rain that happens in Manchester.
There's no drunk shouting around there.
They're not drunk.
Which happened in the centre of town in the northern quarter, like you're there at night singing away, and none of that. It's just silent, man. Wake up, open windows, the birds, trees right outside, and it's every morning. It's like, thank you.
Well, this is a representation of how you want to live your life and how you do live your life. So I guess it does tie in with the person you are, and now it's just externalized a bit more. Oh, we're going in there deep straight away.
I know, yeah, to say how our environment reflects where we're at and what the environments that we survive in or thrive, or the ones that we keep ourselves in when we perhaps shouldn't. You know, fighting through what we say is right in the mind as opposed to what the needs of ourselves are. But yeah, before we get into things, man, how are you?
Yeah, very well. I thought we'll just go straight into it instead of going into all the intros and stuff. But yeah, it's been an interesting process the last 6 to 8 months. Again, transforming into a different part of my life. Climbing as always, you know, and dropping a couple of kilos for climbing, and just really enjoying life from that aspect, but also working a lot and building obviously a foundation and a career on the other side, which is quite nice. But it's just obviously finding a balance between the two. I think the first lockdown, if there was one way to describe that lockdown, I would say it was more to do with spiritual growth. This lockdown, I would say it's more to do with material growth, in the sense of our day-to-day runnings, how we, you know, live our lives, admin, how we maintain everything. You know, we've got to understand the world that we live in. If we're not going to go off and be monks, then we're going to have to also participate in the world. And I think some people end up forgetting that part of their life, me included. So I'm just adjusting to going back into living a lockdown-free life. Is that you?
Yeah.
There's always something that comes in the way. That's going to be our first cut. You know, I thought in the first podcast we won't have these issues, but clearly some things always will remain the same. Right, we'll be back. What was that? Parcel
Delivery.
God, I was just saying, we thought a new start. We probably won't have the old habits, but no, all habits remain the same. So as much as we were talking about growth, some things need to remain the same. Some things you just have to keep
strong roots.
Strong roots, yeah. You can't move away from your strong roots. What were we saying?
So where you are, you've set new foundations. You're saying the lockdown was material based for you rather than spiritual. After the first one, spiritual. Second one, more material. And
I think it's been about integrating the two things together and trying to form some form of harmony. It's in a new relationship, which is new for me because I've not been in a proper relationship for a very long time. And I think the first season of Conscious Conversation, I think we did probably 2 seasons because we had a break in between, but the first 2 seasons of Conscious Conversation was coming from the point of view of your own individual spiritual path. And now I think as we go down this season, we'll move into how to integrate that into your daily life, how to integrate it into your relationships, how to integrate it with, you know, your human interactions with people as well. So that'll be an interesting thing to listen to for our viewers or our listeners. But yeah, back to what we were saying before. Something I was talking to someone about the other day, and I'm trying to figure out who it was. I think that's something else I'm losing at the moment. I can't figure out who I'm having these conversations with. Whereas before it was just Craig Seaton, the main spiritual guy I was going to, and everyone else was just like coming in and out. So I could really trace the conversations, and now it's just with everyone. And I think someone was saying about how we're destroying the planet and stuff. And I said to him, oh, I know who it was. It was a friend of Sonia's, and we just sat together and we were just having a really deep conversation after we went out for some food. And I said to her, isn't it funny how the way we're treating the planet, we're destroying the planet in using fossil fuels irresponsibly, polluting the water that we're drinking, the foods, all the additives and all the toxins that are going into the foods that we're consuming. Isn't it funny how that's a reflection of the internal struggle that's happening on the inside? So how we are mentally, what we're doing to our bodies, the pollution that we're putting inside of our bodies, the types of foods we're consuming. Because we treat our bodies in that way, we also treat the earth and the environment in exactly the same way, and vice versa. So it's exactly the same way. The way we're polluting the planet is also how we're polluting ourselves.
Yeah, on that. Cayenne pepper spicy in that cacao. I had a reflection a few weeks back, and it was similar in line with this, how the world is always, the outworld is a reflection of where we're at on the inner. And you think, for what you're saying about the food we're putting in or how we treat the world, also with like the mass destruction we do, or the fact that we use resources. We use the crudest resource there is with taking the oil and burning the trees, and the fact we have charities to reinstall safe protections for the forest, and that they have to struggle to get to that point. Like, it shows the low level of consciousness of humanity, of where we're at. It's, we're literally burning our house down for profit. So we put profit before the future of our children or the future of mankind, literally. Because we're definitely at a point, and you'll be able to go into this more intellectually than I can, but at a point in humanity where we know we don't need to be using those kind of fuels anymore, or even having the same system of how society works, in the split of rich and poor, or, the upper class and low class and everything in between, in the sense of the category for that person, or that quality of living, or a standard for a certain caste of people. That doesn't need to exist, I believe. And I think because we're programmed to have this one system, we could have thousands of systems, but we've got, here's this one system, here's who you vote for, left or right, here's the fuels that we're using and we're not changing, and causing so much struggle. So when we have conflict, or we think this isn't right, that's great, because we're recognising that within ourselves, of also the conflicts and the way that we treat those emotional aspects to ourselves, tying this into the work that we do with breath work, where you're working on your traumas, or it's such a big thing for people to not allow themselves to feel certain emotions. So if you can't allow yourself to cry, because we're told not to cry, you can't express your anger, can't laugh, whatever it is, that will be represented in our external worlds. So we might not think we're the ones causing the damage, say in the sense of destroying the forest or using the crude oils. But when we reflect on internally what we're doing, that energy will be out somewhere in our life, which will manifest in unconsciousness. So it might just be, again, no judgments made here, but let's say we were eating meat all the time, because that level of consciousness is in part of that cycle, fine. We need to come across the information or the education to go, and then we resist everything at first, and then we go, oh, actually, maybe there is something in that if it's not being forced on us, but we're aware of it. So that would go from a state of unconsciousness of doing one thing to say, let's say, eat your meat constantly, and then go into eating it less, or going into vegetables. Now, my own journey of that process was, I was big meat consumption until 25, is then I started to change. Up until that point, it's recognising I was unconscious, and you can't see you're in it while you're in it. It's only when you're swimming underwater, like, well, I'm underwater, and then you come up to the top and like, oh, there's air up here. And it's those levels of unconsciousness is what we're doing to the world, in the respect of, yeah, we need fuel, let's burn the trees, yeah, we need oil. When we know there's electric cars out there, we know there's reusable free energy sources that we've known since the 60s or prior, the 30s maybe, but that stuff is suppressed and not acknowledged. And when this information is suppressed and acknowledged, and we don't know about it, but we know there's something better out there, the confusion and the upset that brings internally to us, it's like being suppressed, but we don't know what by. We just know there must be a better way of living. And you can bring in mindfulness and being in the moment and acceptance of where it is, with a healthy strive to go forward, which can take out, the upset of the state of the world, because we can get really bogged down with that kind of crap. But always, looking in and looking for the next point, and talking to different people, or looking at different resources of information to bring us out of unconsciousness. And first, by saying we are unconscious, we have to accept that, to move through. Because if it's like if you tell someone they're stubborn, something that I can be very much so, someone will tell me I'm stubborn, Abs, my partner, and she'll say, "You're stubborn," I'll be like, "No, I'm not stubborn." And like, why do I react that way? Oh, because I am.
Yeah.
And it's only when these things come in first where we have our natural resistance, so we don't have to get too upset that we were resistant or we acted maybe angrily. For my defense would be, I'm not stubborn. A bit of anger. Oh, why is that there? Oh, because I am, and I don't want to acknowledge it. Or I want my reality to remain the same. So it's only through the unconsciousness, which comes with pain, to go, now I can bring consciousness to that. But without sort of feeling, if we've got the ego or the mindset that goes, no, I'm perfect and life is my way and it should be like that, and I don't want to change. Essentially, I'm just using this comparison now as I'm burning the trees and I'm using crude oil and, just these kind of microscopic or macroscopic comparisons. I mean, does that make sense? Am I just spitting out my own world here, or is it comparable in other narratives?
Well, what you just said there, I've also felt that I've been reading Sadhguru's Karma book, which is what we were just talking about previously, before we started the podcast. And he says something that was really interesting for me, which is what I highlighted as well. Sometimes it's not your pain or your struggle that's causing what's happening out there and your initial instinct to react in a certain way. Sometimes it can also be ancestral. So it could be passed on from previous generations. So it's known as ancestral pain. When a group of people still suffer, modern day people suffer the pain and the struggles of their previous ancestors. For example, what's happened with the blacks in the past, what's happened with the Native Americans in America in the past. The modern generation is still suffering because of the consequences of what's happened to their forefathers. It's just passed through memory. So that's something that's a big theme in Sadhguru's book. He's talking about memory and the transference of memory and how you have to break that cycle. You have to be the one person that says, I will not suffer the pains and the struggles that my ancestors were going through. And it doesn't have to be so extreme in the sense of war and actual, oppression of people. It could be something minute, but it's still affecting a large group of people. And it's very consistent amongst the same people, the same generation, the same type of lifestyles and habits that those same people are still doing. A large portion of that could be through memory and ancestral pain, which is what Sadhguru, one of the definitions of karma is we're using memory from the past to shape our decisions. So he's saying that to first become aware or conscious of that's what it is. So we were just talking about the struggles between religions and stuff, like if you're Hindu and Muslim, and how that can also affect the modern generation in terms of decisions made for relationships and stuff. And I think it's something that the individual has to stand up and say, I need to now move away from that, distance myself from what's happened in the past. It doesn't mean you forget it. You acknowledge what's happened in the past, but at some point you're going to have to say, I need to draw a line and I need to move away from that. So then whatever has affected us in the past isn't affecting us in the future. Because what happens is that memory is now passed on to the next generation of kids. And now those kids hate and resent other people for no reason and they don't know why. So we have to be the ones responsible for our own destiny, if you want to use it, or your own decisions, to say, I'm going to now move past this and say, we can't do what we were doing in the past. Decisions have been made in the past. For example, back in the past, we didn't know that fossil fuels were limited, or we didn't know, there's a certain amount of ignorance that goes towards it, and information and education that's been sent around it. We didn't know that it was a big issue until we found out that obviously burning of the fuels is causing damage to the environment, to the atmosphere, to everything that we're doing with breathing, the trees, etc. I think now we have to make that individual decision. I think we've said it many times in the past in the podcast, and also when we're just having conversations. It has to come from the individual responsibility to say, I'm going to now do something about it myself, and not to try and take the burden of the world on your shoulders and to try and change everything in such a drastic way. And I think we're living in times where people are trying to do that. They're trying to make massive changes before making the changes themselves. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to go out there and do something, and I think we've always mentioned Jordan Peterson on this podcast, but I think he's the one who really puts it right there. He says that, instead of trying to go out there and trying to change the world, try and clean up your own room first. Try and deal with all the problems that you're having in your life before you start to go out there and you try to create these changes. So I think, again, it comes back to starting from the individual level. What are you doing that's causing you these insecurities or this anxiety that's popping up. I know a few of my friends, I don't want to mention their names, but they tend to post a lot on Instagram about the struggles that are happening in the world. But the problem with that is, how is that affecting you internally? Is it causing you more pain and suffering? Are you having sleepless nights because of being exposed to this type of news? Or is it actually benefiting you? Are you doing something forward to help what's happening? And I think we're getting too caught up in this idea of educating people. And through education, there comes this idea of, I know better than you. You need to now go out there and find out what's going on. And I think that's what's causing most of our own internal struggles, and it's affecting us in our own lives. Like, how many people are having relationship problems because they're too worried about what's going on out in the world instead of dealing with their relationships. Really bad relationships with their kids, their partners, their parents. And I think it has to come down to those basic things. And people will ask the question, what is that going to resolve? If I focus on my relationships, my parents, etc., how is that going to save the planet from the problems that it's going through? Well, if more than one person does that, let's say 500,000 people do that on the planet, how do you think that will affect the planet? We'll have a different perspective of how to deal with life. We'll have a lot more compassion towards other individuals, towards creatures, to everything, just based on those basic principles of taking care of your own life. And we also have to be careful that we don't fall into the pitfall of, when we say self-care, I think that word again has been used and abused in today's culture. Self-care has gone into narcissism. I think there's a very fine line between the two, and I think now it's leaning towards narcissism or self-absorption, which is about me, how I'm feeling about things in life, how it's affecting me, and we have to be very careful that we don't go into those waters where it's all about me and how I feel about situations, because I know it is about you, because the first interaction you have with the world is through you, your senses, your perspective, your lens. But at the end of the day, if we cross over into narcissism, then it becomes all about us. The world revolves around our ideas instead of actually us adapting to how the world really is, because we know there's one truth out there, and there's multiple ways of achieving that truth. But I think people will get way too caught up in being the truth themselves. They want to be the truth, and their ideas and their views on the world has to be central. And I think there's too much of that going on as well. So how do you think people manage that in a world where seems to be the theme? If you've got an issue, people encourage you to express it on social media towards the world.
Yeah, this is there's so much in everything you said that I want to go back into, whether it was relationships and religion, our reflections on the world and how our affected ancestral healing, which is like 7 generations above and 7 generations below that we have an effect on, which is also why I believe there's always a black sheep in the family too, to help cure and heal that, which the family wouldn't do necessarily. But to go into what you said there was the expression that we get, and I'll use my own self as an example for what we use social media for, because I was the TikTok, which I said the TikTok like I'm 8 years old there. Bloody hell, it's happening. I'm turning into my dad. It's happening. Seeing these videos and these funny dances that we do. And I was thinking, like, am I just being a grouch when I see this? I'm like, that's not for me. Because form of expression, is it something repressed to me that's judging it because I want to dance, and I'm not showing it out? And it's like, there's also parts of ego that want to be seen, and everyone's doing a trend, so I'll follow this way. Or just how, I don't use TikTok, but the reels that are on Instagram now, and it's an interesting one, is what's genuine self-expression or what's a trend? And when I liken things to a trend, which obviously if it's a wildfire and everyone's doing it, it tends to be the trend. Yeah. Like, what's the principle for? Why do we want to be seen in such a way? And there's so much involved with self-care now that it has become narcissistic and making it all about me. Like, it's branded now like it's okay to be sad, and it really is. But when we're seeing all the time super motivational quotes, or it's okay to feel like this, and if you want to say no, it's yeah, great. But we can, if it's all the time, we're going to internalize that and think, yeah, it is all about me. And I believe that will soak in unconsciously too. Be it everything I do, or my expression, or I do it this way, or look at me, or I need to do this. It isn't considering the truth of the whole. And now going in a massive hole for myself about finding the truth. I would I would authentically say it wasn't so much about the ego. There could be elements of that, but it was about, I love the universe and life and space and consciousness, and and I'm sure people who listen know that that's kind of the way I'm entailed to follow. So to see that I want truth, to know the ultimate truth, actually became a hindrance at a point, because I can't know the ultimate truth, and that's what I've sort of come into accept, and easing off from this struggle of going, I must know, or the search for enlightenment is easing off and going, I've got to let that be out of my hands. All I can do is align my own virtues to raise energy. So I will just try and see things as energy now, not right or wrong. What's the energy bringing, and is it good in me? Is it, even if it's anger or sadness, leave it. It doesn't mean anger and sadness are bad. It means, I'm feeling that energy, is do I allow it or do I reject it? You have to allow and to work with it. But yeah, if we're going into this narcissistic view of life is just about me, I've got an example. Actually, a friend of mine was supposed to meet another friend, but she doesn't like to make plans, because she's going into this phase where it's like, I don't make plans, I'm a free spirit, and all this kind of narrative, which is characters that we play. As always, we've got to play the pendulum to understand what that feeling is before we can readjust. So again, that's why we always have to refrain from judgment, but can give honest advice, like, man, what you're doing there's a little too far out, or have you tried doing this, And we can only offer advice because we can't impose our truth onto somebody else, because we're at stages and layers of truth and consciousness all over the show, which is why that search for compassion and understanding and empathy, but authenticity about where we're at as well, because that can help people. Doesn't mean it needs to, or it might not. That's why it's such an interesting field of coming from yourself, but open to where the world's at and trying to help the light side grow as such without rejecting darkness. Tailed off really big here, but to come back to understanding, the troubles that we have with ourselves and finding that truth. If we're thinking it's just about me and what I'm doing with my feelings and where it's at, we will forget everybody else. And the social media movement, which is so useful and helpful, becomes very destructive, because here's what I'm doing. I'll check myself when I'm doing a post. I was like, what's this for? An example, actually, I must have been last year at some point, and I was struggling because I struggled to express what I'm sad about or upset, or you've got to remain calm and balanced and all this stuff that gets in the way at times. And I put a post on how upset I was, and I'd cried and gone through this thing, because for me it was very revolutionary to express that way. And a friend of mine, he says, why did you post that? What are you putting that out for? And sort of gave me some thought on it about why he thought you shouldn't do those things. And time going on, and I reflect and go, you know what, it was right for me to express that way. Somebody else's truth who saw it, they might be fine to internalize these things that way, but I did have to express that, or at least that path took me to express it. And it fixed things to allow me to open up in ways that I wouldn't open up. So that's when I think this self-expression on social media is useful. It's just if we get stuck into this of, here I am doing this dance again and again, or here I am talking about this thing, or not allowing space for adjustment, or following a trend. So it's a tricky one to get through, but ultimately, are we bringing something good out for spirit and for connection, or is it coming from, look at me, come look at me? Times we need to be seen, but are we being seen healthily, or are we being seen because I want to feel like I'm special? I want you to notice me. Here's my dinner. These nonchalance, not the word, but these really unpassive things, trivial that we don't need, is like, here's my dinner. Right, cool. And here's my breakfast. I'm like, why do we need to continue to show, here's what my daily life is like, other than for gratification, for you to know what I'm doing? For what? If it's not bringing these helpful things, or it's not a genuine expression, it's just, my phone's itchy and the dopamine wants to go, so I'll press that button and go, fuck it, here's my thing. And there'll be still elements of myself that do that, so it's not a full judgment on where the world are. It's like, we've got these tools and these ways to understand. And I love what you said before about the burning of the fossil fuels and the trees, is we didn't recognise what we were doing, and now we do. We have to be conscious about it. So perhaps we have to be conscious now about what we're saying on social media and why we're doing it, or why we're looking for these forms of expression which never existed prior. So this could be the swing of years and years of suppression and repression to go, look at everything I'm doing, and then we'll come back down and calm it out a little bit and make it more progressive. But again, it depends, conscious levels, people around us, education, etc.
Yeah, so to add to what you just said there, it just made me think of something. When a person perceives you in a certain way, when a group of people perceive you in a certain way, and they expect a certain result from you, like when you're saying all these things about your internal struggles, I've never met Craig in that situation. I've never seen you when we're having conversations, when we're having dialogue, when we're hanging around with each other, I've never seen that side of you. I've heard you talk about what you've been going through, but I've never actually addressed you when you've been going through that. So even to this stage, I have a perspective of Craig Seaton. You know, I know Craig Seaton as this breathwork teacher, spiritual guy, very chilled. I never get to see the other half, and maybe that's a detriment to our interactions as well. But because of that, there's this idea that there's no way this person should be going through this or should be expressing this. So when you then post something that is completely out of what you normally post, people think, is this person posting this for attention, or what's the reason? Or I don't think this person should be posting this. And I know there's a common friend of ours who went through something similar, a breakup, and she posted a video of her dancing, and all of her videos, and she's a lot bigger on social media than we are, all of her videos were consistent about doing one particular thing. And all of a sudden she had this random video of her just dancing in the middle of the room for the camera. And I get it, like she did it because she just thought, I'm just going to record it and post it. And she had a couple of posts and people saying that, have you posted this on the wrong Instagram? Have you not got like a personal one you should post this on? Because I'm expecting a certain type of video from you. And I think she responded as in, you know, I'm not doing this for anyone else. I'm just doing it because it's my form of expression, and all her main stuff that she posts anyway, she's doing that as a form of her expression and her passion. And if she randomly posts a video of her doing other things, it shouldn't really affect her, but it did affect her, just based on what the response was. And it made me think, when people see you, Craig, it's like, we know you as this breathwork teacher, as a spiritual healer, and how people look up to you. So when you have that moment of vulnerability, people automatically assume, no, that can't be Craig. And I've seen that in people, and I said it to one of my friends who just started getting into the path of brahmacharya. And I said, whatever's led you to this path, he told me this amazing story of how he wasn't spiritual, just went to India, and went to a place called Saranpur, which is where this temple has been created, and there's a shrine of Hanuman, the Hindu god, and his presence in that temple is really intimidating and deep, and you can feel the energy. And he had a dream about Hanuman and everything that had gone on. So he went through this experience, and he said a couple of these Brahmins traveled 180 kilometers, 180 miles to come see him. And I think it was 9 of them who came just to see him because they heard about him and all this, his dream and everything. But then I said, you've got to be careful that you don't buy into your own hype. Yes, this thing has happened to you. Yes, it makes you slightly special, but don't buy into your own hype, because what you'll use that as your way of defining yourself. So for example, in my situation, I was told that I should ideally be taking the path of a monk because that's how I'm lined, mainly. There's parts of me that don't align with that yet. Maybe in a future lifetime I will probably completely leave the path of a householder and take the reins of a monk, but not in this one. And I almost believed my own hype, because I was like, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do that, and anytime I did something that didn't align with that path, it made me feel guilty. So I'm like, I'm buying into this thing, and I'm also selling it. It's one thing for someone to say that to you and you just keep it in the back of your head and you keep it inside of you. It's the other thing is to try and tell people, oh, this is what's happened to me. You're trying to tell people how special you are. And I think that's a pitfall in its own self, that you tell people how great you are. And I said, the one thing I've learned from the last lockdown to where we are right now, in terms of spirituality, is to let go of all that shit. Don't ever compliment yourself. Don't ever give yourself the opportunity to compliment yourself. Let other people say whatever they want about you. Tell them how great, they'll say how great you are for what you've done for them. Fine, acknowledge that, say thank you and respect what they're saying, but don't let that become another layer of yourself. Because as soon as, even the tiniest thing, if someone just says, oh Craig, right now you've made cacao and I don't normally drink these things.
Never drinks anything.
I don't drink anything. Not even water, right? Yeah. And it tastes amazing. I can just say to you, Craig, you've made it really well. And, it's a tiny little thing and you might think, oh, thank you. It feels great. Acknowledge it as that, but don't allow that to be a part of your layer to be like, oh, now I'm a great cacao maker.
The cow connoisseur.
Exactly, yeah. Brewer. And it's just something like that, something very trivial you take on and you allow it to become you. Or someone just makes a compliment and says, you're climbing well, you're getting better at climbing these high grades, and now you think you're an amazing climber or something. And it's not bad, it sounds like we're picking on something that's tiny, but it can grow. It can grow into something that you can't control. And when it does grow into that, then people see you as that.
Yeah.
And because you keep pushing the idea, like for example, for me, handstand guy, calisthenics guy, and now I'm not really into that sort of realm. I don't do that stuff myself, but I train people in that. But now that I've become that person, it's hard to distance myself from that person until you take the conscious decision to say, okay, I'm no longer that person anymore. And once you get to that stage, I think that's when life becomes a bit more freeing for you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Open. Yeah, well said, mate. I think it's that, you know, if you, and this is it with social media too, because we want these certain things to be what we present and what we offer. Like breath, you know, my Instagram, I choose it to just be about breath, but I will also put other things that are doing there, my bow staff, or like that honest expression, because if the image has been created that we are on social media, and when I say we are, I mean all of us, like, look how great this is, or look who I am, I'm about this. It's fine if you separate that, like I could just have Instagram about breathwork and leave it be and not make anything of it other than it's the platform to share breathwork and to talk about the events. But I do like to put myself in there as well to show the full range of all that a human is. Because if we just define ourselves by that one thing that, say, is the special thing or the thing we love, and the ego will take it and go, this is who I am. And that's why I like to be honest. As you said, you might not have seen myself in those states other than in conversation. Which, that's why it's a testament to be able to talk about the things that happen outside, you know, outside of ourselves, that isn't just about the image. Because I was doing that at a point, and I was doing it not just for the world to see, but for me. Like, I wanted to be these things, which made me reject and push away the darker sides of myself, and the things where, no, I can't cry, and, you know, it's, or what my fears are. Like, I've been a drug addict, been a sex addict, and these things have consequences in the future. And if you go, no, it's not true, it's not real, or, you know, I don't want to tell people when I've cried and things like that, it's like, you're not a full human being. And we're portraying then, just look at the perfection of the image that I will display on social media, or I will only talk to this person about certain things, rather than, yeah, I've fucked up a lot in my life and these hard things, and it's not just what you see. And that's why it's nice to bring in other elements of the multifaceted sides that we have of our truths, because we've all had mistakes, we all have issues, we all have troubles. And when we just say that no things are perfect, or, you know, here's the image I want you to see, it will only damage us over time. So what I learned and what I try and stick with, and hence, you know, these conversations, or even to be able to talk about it, whether it's on a podcast or it's just to somebody, you know, you think, what are the parts that we hide, or the darkest secrets? Can you tell somebody? Can you tell that even if it's just the person closest to you? I mean, there's stuff that I couldn't even write in a diary because I wanted to reject it that much. Therefore, I'm dismissing reality. I'm not acknowledging reality, and that's only through attachment of, I don't want to feel that, I want to feel like this, or I want to be seen like that. So if there's attachment to those elements, we can't, how are we going to get to liberation? It's like, what is your ultimate goal? And I think we're fortunate in that we love the spiritual lifestyle, you know, almost to a deficit where we don't bring it into the world, but it's something we're both working on quite well, is to, you know, the label of being, I want to be a monk and go to them. We both feel like that. Perhaps we've done that in past lives. That's why we're here, to integrate the knowledge or the passion we have for spirituality into the layman's world. So who knows? That's why you've got to go off your heart and where you're at, and try to not hide or suppress, and be open and free. And I always think the people that I admire and look to are those who are just open, and they can be teaching the class and they go, oh yeah, I did this once into this thing, or I'm struggling with that. It's like, fuck, you're a human as well. And then we don't idolize and put things above.
Yes.
And once we've seen that enough times, we go, guess what? You're everything. You're the whole universe. You know, you're the sun and the fire, or the explosions, or the anger, or the wars, or the tears, or the floods, or the beauty of the trees, and it's all in there. So when we dismiss the elements that we don't like about ourselves, or we reject, or we hide, we're cutting off a part of the world or a part of the universe. It's like, no, it's okay. We just got to talk and express and find a nice point through it, which is why there's a you here and there's other people in the world. It's not just my journey. It is from what I experience, but I can open that and free that. And you can't open it and free it if you're denying certain elements of it, or you don't want that to happen. Like, you reflect on it, forgive yourself, know what you can do to change it, and then you don't have to hold it anymore. It's like the Buddha would say, if you've got that burning coal in your hand, you know, that's what anger is. Like, anger's hurting you, it's burning you if we keep and maintain it. So you can let it go, but You can't let it go if you're so used to that heat in your hand all the time. You're like, no, this is how I am, and I wish it wasn't there, but it is. Like, just stop holding it, acknowledge it, feel it, and let it go.
Yeah. It goes into this idea of caricatures, and it just made me think about it when he was talking about social media. That's all social media is. Even books, when you read a book about something, it's just a caricature of a perspective of someone's life at some point. The issue is we become so aligned with these books, whether it's spiritual books or the self-development books, etc. We become so aligned with those views because those views are a reflection of how we feel in that moment in time, or solutions that we want to try and instill in our lives or trying to achieve in our lives. But the problem is when we idolize it, we do exactly what we said. We take the human element out of it, which is, what about the other side? What about the full perspective? And I think you've got that opportunity on social media to do that. But at the same time, if you just acknowledge it as a caricature of a person and not the full package, then generally speaking, you won't hit resistance. So for example, if you're presenting yourself as a breathwork teacher on the internet, and once in a while you put out there some of the little struggles that you're going through, as long as a person, as a viewer, or as a follower of you, I see that there are parts of you that are on social media that, generally speaking, are not massively talked about and not massively expressed by you. And I see once in a while, I accept that you're going to have this moment where you're going to present something that's slightly different or completely out there from what you normally put there. Then it won't be an issue. There won't be an internal struggle for me. There won't be a rigidity for me to believe that there's no way Craig could also be human. That's basically what it is. It's down to that. And we've also done that with prominent characters of the past. The people that we label as gods, Krishna, Jesus, Buddha, Gautama Buddha, Mahatma Gandhi, humans that were still humans. They still had their flaws, and we've created these texts, and they're amazing texts that tell you stories about these people, autobiographies, the Bhagavad Gita, the philosophy of life, these things that were written down eventually. It's still a snapshot of a way of thinking about life, and one snapshot shows a greater perspective of life, but at the same time it's still a perspective of life, and you choose to either adopt that perspective of life and try and integrate it as much as possible. And we always talk about trying to experience all the things that are mentioned in these books. Even if Gandhi's talking about his struggles with trying to confront the British Empire and trying to get the independence of India, try and reflect that, try to integrate that into your life as well, because at some point you're going to go through some form of struggle that needs this kind of determination of how to deal with life. And I think if you see it as that, then you have way more respect and more admiration for what the person has been going through. And I think Sadhguru said that multiple times in the past, and especially in this book of karma, where he says all these people that talk about karma as in, that's that person's karma. So the one example that he uses quite prominently is, say you see some kids struggle on the street, like you go to India and you see these kids struggle on the street, and you don't know how to react to that. So you go talk to some local about it. The person says, "Oh, don't worry about that. They're always there. That's always just been a part of life, and just don't mind them too much." But when it's your child, when it's that person's child and struggling with those same things, then what happens? The karma goes out the window. Mm-hmm. Then you want to do everything possible to try and help this person out. Why? Because it has some sort of relation to you. So it's how it makes you feel and how it affects you. That's what the problem is. We can't seem to have that perspective on other individuals. We just seem to have it based on how we feel about individuals that belong to us or that we have some sort of connection with. I think that's where the pitfall comes in, where we can have this inhumane separation between everything that's going on in life and what's in our bubble. As long as it's beyond our bubble, we don't care about. But when it's a part of our bubble, that's when the struggle starts. So how do we have a relationship with that? So I think that goes into social media, and how do you have interactions with people on social media that you try and understand that this person might not be the presentation or the perspective this person is giving me is not the full perspective, but it's giving me something that I align with and it's helping me out. And if you accept it as just that, then whatever they present that's beyond that doesn't have a massive knock-on effect, or it doesn't make you think, wait a second, maybe this person shouldn't post these sort of things. It doesn't have that negative sort of reaction inside of you. So maybe it's something that we need to also address when it comes to dealing with and managing social media and the characters that are presented on social media.
Yeah, so what's the whole purpose and why are we saying what we're saying, and it's keeping ourselves in check. Because if people wanted to just maybe that person who would be posting lots of dancings all the time has experienced just that complete suppression, you know, and they've never been able to be out there in the social media. And I really believe it has, you know, because they've been seeing people who, you know, do whatever they want to do on social media because of the trend, which has helped them come out. So that's a great thing, right? That's a really good thing. But it's seeing when that tool has served us, it's like, oh, you know, I can dance in front of people if it's just on my camera, and then maybe that'll help me dance out in public and be looser, and, you know, dancing in with other people, like the British culture of the arm on the side. You know, just how I used to dance in the clubs, just not like this, hillbilly in a way, but, you know, just at the side, bopping the feet until you're drunk, and then you know, you go into what you want. But that was all because of this tension inside that doesn't want to be seen doing something wrong, or it doesn't know how to, and you're literally just moving your body. So there's self-consciousness with that. Social media, I think, can help remove that away. It's just, there's definitely the dangerous trap of us falling into this thing of like, everyone's doing it, so I'll do it, or, well, I'm dancing just because other people are, rather than what does my expression want. And we don't even have to use social media at all. I think that is a great way to map it out and go, oh, can I do it in my real life when these things aren't around, that I'm not doing it for the camera? And however we get to that process, great. You know, it's, for myself as well, whether it was when I started with my bow staff, you know, my lightsabers and my nunchucks, is like, when I was filming that and I put that on Instagram and social media first, I remember thinking, how many videos do I want to take before the one that I want to put out, you know, and all these outtakes. And now that's gone. But that was a part of the process too, which is still the self-conscious and reflectionist. Like, I always struggled with doing what I want to do, and even owning up to doing what I want to do, which would be the bow staff, for example. Such a small thing, but it was massive in my world to learn this and then to share it out, big deals. So it's very helpful in that. But what I could do is run away with it and go like, here's my videos and be doing all the time. Fine if it is my life and my career, but it's not. It's something I enjoy and like to do, and it doesn't need to be filmed all the time. But it's when these elements come in that go, if it's not seen by somebody else, it's not got value. And that is really dangerous. And that's where, if it doesn't have value, if it's not seen, God, like, that is complete narcissism, isn't it? It's complete a case of, you have to acknowledge me for me to feel worth. And yeah, elements of that first definitely was self-expression, because I struggled a lot with that, and I help clients with that now because I went through that. So it's going into the unconscious parts, the unhealthy parts, and making them healthy, and saying, I had to express in such a grand way for the world to see, and now I can just do it for me, or what feels good. So again, it's the refrain of the judgment, but being always cautious of where we're going with what we're doing, and has it ran too crazy, you know? Has it gone too far?
Do you not find it's also because we have we've lost touch with our childlike quality? Because I think there was an example, I don't know who mentioned it might be Jordan Peterson as well, but he said that you get a child, you know, you're observing your child just dancing and just messing around. You'll notice that once in a while, the child will be able to just dance on its own without anyone being there. They'll just enjoy itself, and they'll express itself in whatever way it wants to. But you might see that and think, oh, this kid's got the moves. I need to show other people. So you bring your relatives over and you're like, kid, dance.
Alan Watts.
Perform. Yeah, Alan Watts talks about this, and the child just goes, nah, I'll just dances, and then feels nervous and doesn't want to do it anymore. So you've taken away something that was pure, and you've almost slapped a lens on it, but the lens doesn't have to be, oh, let me put this out there on social media. It's still, let me make this a circus act so people can come around and watch this thing happen, and make the person the center of attention. So you put this child in the middle and you get the child to dance, and the child either does it very sloppy or just doesn't dance at all because of, you know, the pressure of being watched. So I find that process interesting, because we have that, and then we eventually lose that because we have a period of life where we have to become an adult, and we have to, obviously we've got responsibilities, and we've got to pay the bills, and we need to know how to survive in the world. But once you've got those skills, once you've found something that you enjoy, once you found a job that you find, you know what, it's paying the bills, and I can also express myself in other ways. Once you've done that, you have to now rediscover the child. You have to reintegrate that child, find him or find her, and reintegrate it back into your system. Because if you don't, then the wonder and the majesty of life walks past you, or it just flashes by and you don't do anything about it. And then one day you wake up and you realize that, you know, you're 65 years old and you've just let all that time go. And you remember a time when you were a child and you could express yourself fully, and yet for a good portion of your time you could never do that. So it eventually comes back to bite us in the arse if we don't somehow, forget finding the child, but even try to find that childlike quality again. And it's so sad to see so many people people that I haven't seen in a long time. For example, kids from my high school that were good friends of mine. I met a friend last year. It'd been 10 years since we spoke, and as much as we've grown apart, he at least kept his childlike quality, whereas all my other friends that he's still kept in touch with, some of them have lost that quality. I'm like, well, that's not the person I knew. That creative, bubbly child that was there at the age of 14 has now disappeared and become this miserable old man. And I get it that there's responsibilities and things that you need to do. They've got kids now, and they've got bills to pay. But if you don't find that wonder again, the life just doesn't open up its opportunities for you. And opportunities not in the sense of trying to make money or trying to gain something in life, but just in the sense of managing how to live through life. Because at the end of the day, I remember just listening to Sadhguru talk about this in his book, but also he did a video about it. He said that someone asked Buddha, is life suffering? And Buddha said the answer is no. And this person was baffled that Buddha gave such a response. And he said, life isn't suffering because life is based on if you want it to be suffering for you. Whatever situation, whatever circumstance you go through, if you choose it to be suffering and you deal that situation as suffering, then all it will be for you is suffering. You'll have small glimpses of happiness, but most of your life will just be suffering. So you have to somehow find joy and peace and enjoyment out of things through life. And if you have that lens that everything is just, an opportunity for you to try and grow and enjoy yourself, then life isn't suffering, life is joy. And I found that same correlation to what we're just talking about right now, which is finding that childlike quality. Once you found it, because everyone remembers a time as a child that they were happy and they didn't have the pressures of life on them. It's just now trying to rediscover that with the idea that you still have to live with certain restrictions or certain sort of ways, so then you can still pay your bills, and to try and find that quality. And I think we talked about this in a podcast a very long time ago, which is trying to be the jack of all trades, become the ultimate generalist instead of trying to specialize. Instead of trying to specialize in one particular thing, because through specializing, yes, you become really good at it, and you might become the only person in the world that's that top level. But you also lose the part of you where, because you've dedicated so much time and effort into it, you're just known as that person. And you have no other way of interacting with the world. So when you drop off the radar, the example I would use here is athletes that go to their top level. Once they've done that, they've retired, because it's only a certain period of time you can go that hard. Once you retire, the only thing that people remember you is that former athlete that was great, and that's all you live off of. It's sad that you have to live off that, and there's no other ways of expressing yourself. So you become a professional golfer and you retire, and you try another sport, and you don't achieve anything in that sport. You don't get that same level of fame, and that plays on your mind. And this is one of the reasons why I find Michael Jordan really inspiring. Obviously, a lot of people say what he's done in his basketball career, and then as he transitioned towards baseball, he didn't have the same success or impact. I have a lot of admiration for that. The fact that he decided to go, you know what, I'm done with basketball. I've done all I can with basketball. I'm going to move on to something that is slightly different, and maybe it'll challenge me, and maybe I'll fail at it. And that's what happened. He failed at it. But to take that leap of faith into something that's the unknown is definitely more admirable, because it's shining a different perspective on how people view you. People will say Michael Jordan, the amazing basketball player, the Hall of Famer, but they'll rarely ever say Michael Jordan, the guy who tried baseball at, Well, people will say it as a negative thing, but it's a great thing to do, because you've done something that people wouldn't have ever dreamed to ever do, which is change perspectives, change lifestyles, change careers in a time where he was peaking. He was at his peak and decided to do it. It wasn't like he was tailing off. He was at his peak and decided to change careers. That's something that's rare, and I think we can all take something from that, maybe integrate that into our lives. And it doesn't have to be that. You don't have to suddenly give up your job that you've been doing for 30 odd years, but at least try and integrate something on the side that you can also put that same passion, that same intensity towards that, but also bring that playful quality back, which is, well, this is not really my career, so I don't really have any pressures on me to try and achieve this. Where you get the other response, which is, well, I've gone hard at this, which means I'm going to have to go hard at this. I'm going to have to go hard at this. That's the only way people know how to interact with the world. And that's another sad process as well, because you can't let go of this idea that you have to go in with that same intensity. But yeah, I think that sort of perspective also has many consequences in other aspects of your life, whether it's relationships, whether it's your interactions with your friends, etc. Some people just need to have that intensity. And to be fair, whatever it is, it's your thing. But for us, our forms of expression is how do we do it in the most playful way as possible. But yeah, that's my little ramble. I don't know what that was about, and it just kind of came out. But I think you said something about anger as well, and I found that fascinating. I found this kind of system to deal with anger, and I've shared it around, and it's from a monk friend of mine. He says when you interact with anger, you should do it in 3 ways. The last way, you should try and make sure you don't ever get to that stage, but see anger as let's say you and I have a scuffle, we have an argument. The way to deal with that argument is to make sure that it never crosses from the point of view of drawing a line in water. So you draw a line in water, within a couple of seconds the line disappears, because the water, obviously the particles interact and it covers the line up, so the line disappears. That's how our argument should be. They say monks argue, they hate each other sometimes, but they never let that argument go beyond drawing a line in sand. So one level higher than water is sand. You draw your finger in sand, within a few minutes, maybe a few hours, when the water comes across, or when the winds blow across, the line in sand will disappear and it'll just level itself out again. But you never want to draw a line in steel, because when you draw a line in steel, you have to carve a line in steel, and that is way more permanent. So now, in order to get rid of that line, you have to melt the steel, you have to make sure that you're leveling it off, and it has to disappear in that way. So in the same way, if you have anger that builds in those 3 levels, never let it go beyond the line in sand, because it will eventually ease itself off. If it doesn't do it by the end of the day, it'll do it in the next couple of days. But if it ever gets to a point where now you've drawn a line in steel, it's going to take a lot more effort, a lot more work now to try and get rid of that, because then it'll leak into other parts of your life. So I thought that's such a great, healthy way of dealing with interaction. So you get yourself in a situation where you're going to argue with someone or whatever happens, ask yourself that question. Stop yourself and ask yourself the question: have I drawn a line in water, sand, or has it now crossed over to steel? And try and make sure you minimize the amount of times it crosses over into steel, to the point where you no longer have that. And I think you and I are probably there or thereabouts in life where it rarely ever crosses over into steel.
I think it's knowing where those steel lines are within yourself. It's a good example of within arguments of other people, but those blocks that we have within. So say that what you were saying about the inner child stuff and being fun and free and that, if you can't be an inner child, there's a steel line somewhere, which is why that expression is very difficult at times, because you can't get past the steel line, whether it's through the fear of ridicule, or you don't feel good enough, or or even from what we're saying, you might think, if I do that now, I'm showing off. It's like, you got to know your lines yourself. If you want to do that dance and put it on Instagram, don't sort of absorb the views that we're saying, because it might be right for you to do that. We're generally talking in overview, so this is what the point of being your self-authority is. But when you can become more playful, which is what Michael Jordan did, he's not got that steel line where he's literally became the world's greatest basketballer, became the world's greatest at something, and then gone, right, it's time to do something else now, because he's not got the rigidity and the stiffness that goes, no, you've got to keep doing this because I want to keep that image, and I'll do it until I'm die, so I'm known as that. And if I fail in something else, then I won't be remembered for that. And it's like, that thought track it takes your life away if you can't be open and go to mistakes and failure. And failure is so important. Like, you could probably get the average American or Jordan fan is going, he's doing baseball now, he's crap, he shouldn't have done that, and he's not the god you thought he was, which is the important part. We're not the gods that the projections we put on other people of being perfect,
the caricatures.
Yeah, so you have to know that you are all these things, and if you're capable of doing that, your life experience needs to come over what you want other people to see or what you want other people to take from you, because they have to find their own way too. And that's why the example of doing what Michael Jordan did is great. Or like Conor McGregor, when he lost that fight, and people could then go, he lost, he's not as good as I thought he was, or I used to hear loads about him. Don't follow the fighting route, but you'd hear about him all the time. And then when he failed, I've not heard anything about him for a long time, when it was after losing that fight. And because people's then expectations or desires for this heroic icon that they've put above everything else is no longer that. That's the same when our parents let us down or our partner's done something we don't like, and then we project onto them, oh, I can't believe you did that. But it turns out they're human, and it turns out they can be more human than we can when we can't allow them to fail because we don't allow ourselves to. And it's not seeing failure as a negative, it's seeing failure as a part of the product of achieving, moving into something, whether we're afraid to go to that yoga class for the first time or to speak up for the first time or whatever it is, we've got to go into that to allow, failure's going to come with it, so I'm going to fall on my ass. Great. When you don't have a problem with that, you're absolutely winning, which is why those people who can do that, I take a lot from that and try to integrate it into myself. Go, failure's good. You can't think you're going to be, like what you said before, you did the first yellow at climbing and how you never thought it was going to be a possibility. You'd never got to that if you hadn't struggled on level 1 of climbing or fell or didn't know what to do. Like, how else will Michael Jordan become the top player? He didn't stop when he missed a shot and he was laughed at by his friends at some point, without a doubt. He took his shots, I can't believe you missed that. If he was, from low self-esteem or in an inferiority complex, he'd be like, oh shit, my mates laughed at me, I'm not going to do that again. I was great all the other time, but that time, because I think I should be better than that. And it's all of that stops you from them being the killing of the potential that every single human has in whatever sphere they want to have it in. And it's also that form of perfectionism that we crave, and why we love authority outside of ourselves and hierarchy systems, or we trust the government or a doctor who generally knows nothing about health and well-being. Here, take these medicines or I'm not saying doctors don't know, but from the pharmaceutical aspect of going, rather than how's your lifestyle, how's the food, what do you do, it's just take these and get these done, or let's go straight into this surgery or what. I remember myself having cartilage put into my nose because I couldn't breathe properly, and this doctor surgeon, he was just like, what you need is this, this and this. Did the surgery, didn't change any, changed it for like a week and didn't change anything after that, and all it was something in my diet that was causing me blocked sinuses, and it's this level of awareness that in certain fields, if you look at something from a mindset, like a doctor will look at one thing one way, physicist will look at something, not physicist, sorry, a physiotherapist will look at something another way, a chiropractor will look at the ailment another way, and a holistic practitioner will look at it another way. And it's like, we have to try these other things out to find a natural balance of what it is that we're looking for, without just dependence on this point of authority outside of self. We go to collect the information and we are trusting of it, sometimes naively. Is okay, I'll just go down there and that person will tell me what to do, but they're only saying from their end, like spirituality. If I absolutely adore Buddhism and I listen to what Buddhism say, but I have to understand that's just the Buddhist philosophy and mindset that's grown from that style of practices, as you would say from Hindu, or none at all, or atheist. Like, we're all, if we were tied to a mindset, why are we in that? Does it actually serve us, or is it just ingrained anyway because the authority of parents and society that we accept when we were kids has trained us that way? And then to become into yourself, which requires, it's okay to fail, don't mind if people laugh, maybe I can laugh at myself, or I'm willing to be wrong and have these conversations. That's freedom. And we think freedom is going to come from if I just keep pushing on and discipline and go great and know all, but it's not. You have to be great at failing. You have to be good at failing, or letting go. Or being good at being wrong is so free. Like, it was such a wonderful thing for me when I dropped my issues with perfectionism and trying to have a certain thing, because that actually causes more problems than it will bring a solution for. So when we can be like, I messed up or it's wrong, you can drop everything. You drop so much weight and your body will feel it and you'll know it. And if we can't get good at failing or admitting where we've gone wrong or what our true issues are, we're going to be stuck for a long time.
It's just adapting to situations, isn't it? And it's nice to have an orientation or a life goal or something to aim for, but it's just really becoming water-like or fluid to try and get there. Even the terminology, when you mentioned your friend who's a free spirit, even certain terminology, I think, all terminology will limit you in some form or way. And that's why I've never really been good at expressing my feelings through talking, because you'll never find the right word to kind of describe what you're feeling. So I think it's moving away from that and just being like, it's okay to just express and not having to tell people how you feel or how you want to express. And yeah, the free spirit thing is quite interesting because there are many connotations attached to a free spirit. And generally speaking, people assume that it means, and maybe it is a one form of perspective, but people assume that it means that you have no attachment to boundaries and etc. and this and that. And it's great, but you got to remember, you have one attachment to a boundary, which is your body. You know, to go beyond this is true freedom. And the reason why you are manifesting as a human being or as whatever you are is because you are some way, some form, you've got certain attachments towards certain boundaries, which is keeping you human, which is keeping you in this body right now. So you've got to learn, what are those boundaries, what are those freedoms I'm seeking? And like you said with your friend, you know, sometimes you don't need to plan, but you can't live like that all the time. You can't just be like, I'm not going to plan anything. So how would you go on holiday then? You just can't just rock up to an airport and be like, I'm going to a holiday.
And this was kind of my point in it, is this person's on that other side of the pendulum where they're thinking, well, I'm a free spirit and you need to be around when I want you to be around because I don't make plans, and if you're not there when I am, and this was the example, if you're not there when I am, like, you better be there. And it's like, well, hold on. You can have this free spirit attitude, but you can't expect everybody else to then fall into your free-spirited plans.
Yeah.
And to say you don't make plans is not true. You go to work at 9 a.m. in the morning, you finish at 5, you eat your dinner, whatever your organisation is a plan. Mm-hmm. And it's pushing that out on other people. You can be the free spirit if you want, but...
live alone.
Yeah, like that's it. Yeah. You know, don't deal with people, don't handle things. Yeah. Be the free spirit, but don't push that onto other people. Allow that they have plans and whatnot. And if yours doesn't coincide with them, fine. Don't get angry or upset because, well, then you're not a free spirit anyway, because you're already pushing, I'm a free spirit, so the world should be, and they should acknowledge how I live. And it's like, well, you're completely self-absorbed and narcissistic in that view, that you're not allowing, in fact, unaware that there's a world out there and it's just about you, just about me and how I operate. Like how we both are with time. We can be a little bit slack and a little bit late with time.
I think, right? A little bit is an understatement.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we work on. It's something I'm going to spend my next month on, like just trying to be 10 minutes early for everything. I've said this before in the past and haven't done it yet, but I want to do it because I want that to change. But the point is, it's allowances for that. Because we know it exists within our lives, and for both of us, so we can relate to that, and we can, you know, have tolerances for it. Do you want me to shut that window?
I'll shut it.
Yeah. So, you have to push the bottom bit and then pull the top. It's a bit awkward.
It is awkward. So push the bottom bit.
I tell you what, mate, I'll get it for you.
Yeah, with the topic of planning and trying to live in such a free way, at the end of the day, we are going to be fighting against time. And it's either you move with the tides of time or you fight against it and you resist it. And if you resist it, you're not going to win. You know, you're going to age, you're going to realize that one day you're going to be old and you're going to have no one there in your life. If that's how you want to live your life, that's fine. You know, that's no problem at all. But you're going to be a very sad, miserable person if you want to interact with the world and you expect the world to come down to your level. And I think this is what I mean by the whole falling into the trap of self-absorption and narcissism. It's a very fine line between self-care and self-narcissism or self-absorption. And you have to keep playing the balancing game. You have to go back in yourself and ask yourself, am I falling into the trap of narcissism now? And I think it has to take an honest answer, honest self-reflection practice to do that, because at times you are going to fall into that, and it's how deep. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing to fall into that a bit. So if you dip your toes in that for a particular reason, you know, sometimes you might just need to stamp your foot down and say, I don't want to do this, you know. But I think other times you have to ask yourself, now, am I still continuing to do this? Am I still continuing to be that rigid? So, you know, you might apply for a job, or you might be working for someone and you don't want to work for them anymore, so you say, I don't want to do this. But then you have to be careful that you don't do that with everyone. Or you go to your relationship with your partner and say, I don't want to do this. And you keep saying that all the time. And eventually you're just going to be sad and miserable and alone. You know, there has to come a point where you have to balance things out and compromise. You know, compromise has to come into play with certain things. So for me now, for the last 6 months, I would say, 5 o'clock starts most days. 5 o'clock starts, 9 o'clock finishes in the evening. So that's what my day is. And by the time I get to 10 or 11 o'clock, I'm ready to knock out. I thought I'd never be that person that would have a structure like that, where I would be waking up at a certain time, going to bed at a certain time. But it's just part and parcel of the game. And if I told myself back then, there's no way I'm going to do this, absolutely not, then you'll feel there'll be many opportunities that you're missing out on. And life will present you opportunities to do something or grow in a certain way, or a course, or I don't know, just hiking or something, some opportunities that will come up and you'll miss out because you decided that this is how my life is, this is how I'm going to live my life. And like we said, it's completely fine if it's just you want to live that sort of lifestyle amongst your own sort of space in your own company, fine, no problem, because you're not harming anyone else. But if you're doing something, if you want to interact with the world where you have to do something and you have to meet people, then that sort of way of dealing with life will just not yield the result you want. And yeah, that's where we are. That's
where the freedom is from your perspective. Like, if I can interact with people, I don't need the freedom is how I handle the situations. Like, it's not a case of that person must be doing this for me to allow it. There's the block within. It's not allowing something in the world, and that doesn't mean we don't have. It's not a bad. It's a bad thing that person's doing, because they might still need a bit of correction, or if it's damaging, we need to get away if it's not healthy for us. But it's the allowance of the world is moving through things all the time, and if we are rigid in our order and our organisation and the structure how we are, we will be cutting everything else off. So it's you said it right there. It's all about balance, and it's something big. I've just got a book on it actually. I'm really looking forward to getting into. Is understanding balance. It's a big thing in my life of polarity, because we talked about oneness and that we're in a dualistic world and we're trying to transcend through dualism, and it very much inclined to go everything has to be about the good and the light and build it up. When we do that without acknowledgement of the darkness or the other side of things or the negative, all that's going to cause is that, like, that's wrong, and that causes frustration and anger and pain, so I don't want that. And yeah, we don't want that, but we can't ignore it. We can't, if we're trying to run away from it without working with it, and in fact getting stronger to be in the darkness, like, because you become a light to yourself. And what is a light? Darkness can't exist where a light is. Like, there's Andrew Holacek, a dream yoga teacher, incredible guy, he's a Buddhist man, and he has this great example. He's like, the stars and everything that's in space, it's all blackness, and if there was no stars nearby, you can't see anything, but just that one star somewhere you'll see, millions of miles away, and there's that one light. That's a light. Like, that light is brightening up that darkness, even that little bit. So that darkness is the representation of the parts that we don't look at within ourselves. When you've built yourself up, let's say, what's a good trait to use? Like, let's go with discipline. There's probably friendlier and easier traits to use, but let's say you're disciplined in a certain manner, and you want to build up meditation or yoga or some kind of physical care. You have to have that discipline in one way or the other to continue to get to some point. If you're not well and you're ill, or you've got to strengthen your body, it's not going to come if you just do one session every week or twice a month or whatever it's got to be. You want to build that light up of being disciplined, and then even if I'm feeling a bit tired, or I could just be lazy and go, it's like, use the light to go into the darkness of, I'm trying to get somewhere with this, to build that light up more. And once it's established, that level of light is there all the time. Generally, it will remain, and then you can build it into other things. And more so, you can then, people will see these, and it doesn't just have to be seen, not what we were mentioning earlier, but the energy that you carry about it is like, people are interested, like, oh, how do you, like, why is your life so joyful, or why do you not get upset when that person's behaving that way? And it's like, well, because you understand the palette of life features all of these things, and it's all right. So it's down to our resilience to not go, that's bad, I'm not going to pretend that exists. We don't have to do anything with it, but acknowledge that it does exist. And how do you want to interact with it? Is it for you, is it not for you? Do you want to help that change, or do you not? Is your direction to help change something somewhere else, And the understanding of balance and harmony is massive. I used to just think it was go to everything good and make it good. It is that, but it's not dismissing that it's bad. And sometimes our emotions will show that. Is when we feel tired or angry. It's like, oh, I'm feeling like this, I'm very irritable. I need to manage this, because I could push that onto somebody else. I could upset my partner, or be mean to a friend, or be ignorant, whatever it is. And it's seeing, oh, I'm in the darkness. right, let's use the light of the discipline that I know when I feel this way, or my perspective has shifted and I'm seeing the world from a more negative thing. Even doesn't mean you're wrong, because even just being tired or hungry can put you in those states. But it's going, oh, I've done this because I'm tired, or I've not slept well, or I'm hungry. Right, let's not push that out in the world. Let's just go, sorry mate, I can't talk today because I'm just feeling in this state, rather than going, I've got to sit here and get through this conversation and I can't be out. Do you know what I mean? It's this, that honesty and authenticity with self, which is what we were talking about with the expression thing earlier, really, is knowing when it's the right thing to do and when it's not, and when you can be there and when you can't, and developing that muscle and that awareness again and again to eventually be able to be through whatever situations are put in front of us without rejection of it. Like, that's mastery of life in my eyes, and that's just through balance and understanding. I'm in the darkness a bit, I need to go and chill out, or I need to take care of myself in another way.
Yeah. I think the balance, sometimes we think balances, everything has to be 50-50. And I don't think it has to be, because if you look at the symbol of yin and yang, we have the small opposite spots on the top of the two fish. And what you said about discipline is a good one. So you'll get a person who is, I would say a balanced person is someone who can be disciplined with something, most things in their life, apart from one thing. They'll have one pet peeve or something where they're completely like messed up and scruffy and whatever. I think that is a greater balance to have. So you hear the stories of, you know, someone who's so organized with all their life, and they'll have a closet full of shit and it's all messed up. I think that is the balance that we need. That's the level of balance which is, you know, healthy, where you can be disciplined in all areas of your life, but something in your life has to have a little less discipline. And I think if you have that, then the rest of the discipline that you do have, you have a more of a healthy interaction with that. Because then you'll think, okay, you know, at least I've got some output or some outlet to be not disciplined in. Where, let's say, for example, in these four walls of your house, you might be this breathwork teacher outside, and, you know, you're helping people out. But in your four walls, you can now take that clothing off, a piece of clothing off, and hang it on the side, and then just be yourself. You know, allow yourself to be human, allow yourself to become a bit more emotional about things, and then once you're ready to interact with the world again, you put those clothes back on, and then you go out and you do your job. And I think the doctors surgeons especially have that. They need that perspective of life. They have to be so disciplined. So the margin of error for a surgeon is very minimal, because it's life and death they're dealing with. But they need some form of outlet to make sure that they can be like that. But I think a lot of people go wrong when it comes to doctors and surgery, where a lot of doctors are alcoholics because they need some they need some form of coping mechanism, especially when it comes to surgery. They need some form of coping to deal with those situations. And I think they turn to alcohol because that numbs the sensation, as opposed to having a healthy form of outlet where they can be like, okay, I can be bad at this thing and it's okay. I don't need to be perfect at this one thing. Whereas when they're going into surgery, they have to be on point. There is no margin for error. And it's how they deal with when they fail in that situation, which is very interesting. So the psychology of a surgeon is very fascinating, where they just don't have that space to be like, okay, I'm wrong, I shouldn't have done this, or I made a mistake here. It's very, very difficult. So I think there has to be some form of way, just, you know, not even surgeons, but you and I need some space where we can just be like, all right, you know, no one's watching, or if you want, show people that as well, which is what we're talking about. Show people that you're 90% breathwork teacher, and then about 10%, oh, by the way, I've got this going on in my life, this and that. You need that little breathing space. And I think when we don't allow for that breathing space for a person, that's when we get into situations where we're looking at extremes of situation, where it's always black or white, or dark or light, etc. Left or right wing politics, etc. You have to now side with fully left wing, even though there might be 10% of the things that you don't agree with. You now have to fully side with that, because 90% of the stuff you say aligns with that. You can't agree with that 10% of right wing stuff that you actually believe in yourself. So that's what the problem is with life. We've got that. Well, it's not the problem with life, it's what we've done to ourselves. You know, it's our way of interacting with the world. We have to live with these extremes, as opposed to being in the massive 98% of grey that exists in between, and only the 2% that exists in the outside.
Yeah, you know, having what you said, there's stuff in the closets out there. It's like, yeah, whatever that mess is. But every now and again, when you're in that good space, open the doors and take something out and see what you can work with at that time. And because it will probably, it's that closet, it's Narnia. Like, there's going to be stuff coming through that wardrobe that we don't even recognise is in there.
Yeah.
So when we're in that good position to work on those negative aspects, do what we can with it, and then, you know, chill and do whatever it is that you do, and going back into, because that's where we will be bringing the darkness to the light to work with it and keep evolving and keep developing, because we can then get very comfortable if we're not looking at that stuff, not all the time, but as you said, as and when we need to go into it. And letting go of whatever we are majority of the time, if it is that hardcore disciplinarian, and letting go and having the freedom, and you know, that's the discipline as well, really. It's like, right, I've got these 2 or 3 hours are scheduled to me to do whatever I want. It's not about self-growth, it's not about what I need to do for work or what I want to show out. It's like, what am I going to do now? Right, I'm just going to slob around and chill out and, you know,
play Breath of the Wild.
Play Breath of the Wild, yeah, get the Switch out, watch Avatar cartoons, whatever it is, you know, like just enjoying these fun parts that don't have to be about getting somewhere. Because if it's always about the growth and getting somewhere, it's tense. It's tense. It's like it has to keep moving on, and it's actually an incorrect view from my perspective, because you're getting on anyway, whether you recognise it or not. It's just what's emotion and energy that you're carrying at that moment that is dictating how you're seeing life or what's happening right here and now. If you're tense, relax it. You know, if you need to breathe because you're running too fast, slow down, and you know, whatever. If you need to go faster because you've got a time limit, then go faster. It's like, whatever it is, what's the right moment? And if we've got that strict statue of how we are, we then can't be malleable to go into those other elements. It will propel us right into the moment, into life, or do what needs to be done. There's a really good Zen quote, and it says, sitting in stillness, the grass still grows, the wind still blows, something along those lines. But basically, just sit in stillness and the grass still grows is like, just calm, be alive and watch, and the world is still alive as well. The world is still doing things. We don't have to be completing something or achieving something all the time. It's like life, that's how we integrate to life. And I think when you do go into that stillness and you're watching movement and you're alright with everything that's going on, the good and the bad, what's happening with the world at the minute is like, you know, such a crazy scenario, which I think is really going to fuck things up in a few years for a lot of people. But that's what's happening right now. So I can sit and watch that and go, right, I could sit and be frustrated and upset and, you know, ready to revolt with a lot of the people who are doing, but that doesn't feel like it's my role. It's just seeing that this is occurring. What can I offer from my individual perspective that will help, that will ease things, but without determination and control. That means I must do that, or I'm not Craig, or I'm not living up to my ideals. It's seeing life as it's playing out. My energy can assist that, because the energy, and when I say my, I mean all of us, wherever you're at, your energy is having an effect or not. And one of the sad parts about inferiority or low self-esteem is you don't think you're having an impact. You're having an impact by being alive. You don't need to be doing something. You're a bundle of energy, and you being here is enough. If you can do it pleasantly and with a smile and happiness, even better, because frequency raises, energy raises then. But yeah, the pressure to do stuff, don't worry, there's how many trillions of people in the planet. So find your happiness and your joy first, and then you live in that groove of it without having to force it. It's just because it feels right. Like that inner child aspect of the work is so important, to be able to be playful. And you can be playful in what you're doing. You'll benefit other people as well, because it's not the tension. You know, as you say, putting on the clothes, let's say going for that breath work, and I put the breath work clothes on, I still try and bring as much authenticity into it as possible, because even when I didn't, it was still so rigid. Right, I've got to do this bit by this time, and I have to pronounce it this way, and rather than allowing myself to, if I middle up my words or a mistake, or like the workshop the other day, hadn't slept for 24 hours. I was just wired awake. I couldn't sleep for whatever reason, you know. And going through the start of it, I couldn't even, I've done how many breathwork workshops, but I couldn't remember the order that I was going through, because my cognitive functions weren't there through lack of sleep. And I was like, oh, you know, right, I'm going through this and that, right? And, you know, it just wasn't clear to me. But, you know, from asking abs or people there, it's like, it's unnoticeable a lot of the time when we make our mistakes, or it's not as efficient as we'd normally like it. If you're still delivering what you're there to deliver, and you're still a human and you treat yourself that way, it's fine. You know, or we can say, oh, I'm sorry today, I didn't sleep that well last night, or whatever it is, you know, not finding excuses, but being truthful. And then when we see people doing that, it's not like, right, I have to go to that place and that person best be like that, or I've not got my money's worth for it, or I don't respect that person anymore because all image, innit? It's not allowing what flows in the moment. And you get good at your craft and at your skill, it's just going to get easier and easier, and you'll deliver a certain standard anyway. But it's still, you still allow people to be people in that time, in what they're experiencing. Yeah,
I think there's a term for that, and I was just thinking about it, and I just remembered it now. I think I've got a new friend of mine, she's a student of mine, she's very young, and she's very eccentric, and she's got a lot of ideas, but she just doesn't know how to ground her ideas. She's bouncing from one idea to the next idea, and if there's interactions where we're just hanging out, she needs to feel like she's productive. It's that P word again, like always thinking that you need to be doing stuff because you feel like you're falling behind in life. It's when you said that, it reminded me of, do you know how you're saying, if you just stay still, life will still carry on going. And I think people are so scared of that life will just leave you behind if you stay still. And it reminded me of Finding Nemo, if you remember that movie. There's a moment where all the animals are riding the slipstream, or the current, and it's just like, that's exactly what life is. You don't need to necessarily swim with the current. You can just stay there, nice and still, and the current will still continue to take you. Maybe not at the rate that you want to go at, but you're still moving forward. And sometimes maybe that's the rate you need to go at. You need to stay still to now move forward. And I think, again, that sounds very spiritual or coated with the woo-woo stuff, but it really isn't. It's very simple. You just are very hippie-ish. It's simple as just you watching things happening in front of you. So whatever you're creating in this world, whether it's art, it's the most expressive form of creativity, or whether you're creating a business, sometimes take a step back and watch it happen, and then see what you've created. And this happened to me recently with my YouTube channel when it comes to my mobility stuff. I've not posted a video since about October or November, and I've had more subscribers and views in that period of time where we are right now since then, where I've not posted anything, than I did when I was posting stuff. I was getting frustrated trying to get to 100 subscribers and get no one watching it, and now I've just crossed 500. I mean, it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's me doing nothing at all now, and it's because you've taken the step away. Maybe not, you don't have to look at that thing anymore. You can just look elsewhere, and you'll see when you come back to it, life has grown. It's grown by itself. And I think that's the beauty of plants. You don't have to watch the plant grow. You look away. You've got to nurture it, and you've got to give the basic requirements, but just go away and come back, and you'll see that it start fruiting the things that you wanted in the first place. Whereas if you sit there waiting for that minute to tick down, a minute is a very long time if you're counting the seconds, so you just let it happen, and life will happen before you. But yeah, I think, what time are we on? I think it's a great place to wrap up now. Unless
just on that, just to then note what you're saying. I think the idea of watching the plants and the trees, how they do it, is such a good analogy to use, because you want that fruit to grow, and this is why we always can learn through nature all the time. I think Sadhguru uses the analogy about the mango tree. Where you can't put the mango tree on top of the mountain because it won't grow the mangoes. It's not the right environment, etc. But more so on how the fruit grows itself. So if you can be sat there, as you said, waiting, like, come on, where's this fruit? Where's this fruit? What are we doing that with ourselves in? Like, why am I not good enough yet? Why can't I do that? Why have I not got whatever it is? But if you're nurturing, as you said, watering the plant, giving it the food, it will blossom on its own. I had a very similar experience on my Instagram with wanting too far, and again, this is a measurement, so it's an ego or it's a mind thing, because if it's a measurement, it's coming from the ego or the brain that likes to measure and control. But I was like close to 2,000 followers, and I was like, oh, I'd love to have that, because I always thought when I set up my account, if I get to that, I will just ease off and chill out, and like, first time I got to 1,000, I was like, oh, I got 1,000 followers, ultimately it doesn't mean anything, but it's like, use these markers as a bit of fun and to get you somewhere. It doesn't define how, it's just you've got an outreach to that, right? And it's a bit of fun. And then I was watching that last, it was about 1,700. I was like, oh, and then getting close. So I was like posting new tags, trying to get people in there. It went up a little bit, then it stopped, and then did a podcast with somebody else that shot it up because of their viewers, and it kept going. It was 1,800, then 1,850, and then 1,860, and then it'd be like 30 followers in the day. It's like, okay. And anyway, it took a few months. It got to that 2,000. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to completely chill out now and not do anything that was fueling that growth that wanted a higher amount of number. Yeah. And then within 3 days, it goes up another 150 where I'm not forced about watching it anymore. And it's like just when you hit that tipping point of you want it to be a certain thing and you ease off and you see it's probably doing the same thing anyway, maybe a little faster because the algorithm's improved, but it's just the fruit's growing on its own then. That was happening prior to me wanting that target. It was growing anyway. You know, whether there's hiatuses and it stops, but you're still out there and you do things and that's feeding it. That's just naturally feeding it. And the feeling you get from watching it go to that point and then going after it, day after it is better. There's no tension and conflict going, I've got to get to that. And then it means something more if I get to that. Once it's done it, you're like, well, perhaps I can use that, you know, before it even happened. And that would be doing something through the joy of doing it because you love to do it without it wanting to account to something.
What's it sitting on now?
I had 2,180 or something like that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Are you posting anything on the...
I've not posted for one. After it got there, it's not posted for a while.
Yeah.
Other than yesterday because it was the breath work. So again, it's just nice not to have that grip in me that wanted to get to a point of saying you've got to keep posting now if you want that momentum to continue.
Yeah.
And ultimately for what? Other than the nicety of hitting that number, there's nothing more than that because those people who I'm offering the breathwork out to, whether they come to a session or get in touch or not, 2,000 people don't. You know, maybe over the period of time, but the people who are on there, it means nothing but the number.
Yeah.
So it's taking in that relaxation and go, just let the fruit come on its own. You know, just do what you do, enjoy what you enjoy. The markers are great, you know, if we're using them as a point to see where we want to strive to and what we're trying to grow to. You know, meditation is such a good example on it. If I've got to meditate for 10 minutes, or I've got to meditate for 20 minutes. If you're saying that, you can't meditate because you've got a limit on it. And meditation is the one thing that's opposite from a limit. It can't be, I'm going to sit here for, you know, maybe have a timer that will go off in 20 minutes time, but it's got to be out of your head to think, right, I'm nearly at 20 minutes because you literally can't meditate if that's in your head. Yeah. So there's my timer and I'm just going to go and see how it goes. Maybe I'll get 60 seconds of complete stillness and space. Maybe I'll get 18 minutes, whatever it is. You don't want to be measuring it. The measure is the process to see how effective I am, but even that will not be the meditation, you know. So there's way more profundity. We would go into that discussion, but as you said, we'll wrap it up here.
We'll wrap it up here. Yeah, it's been a good hour and a half.
Wow, was it?
Yeah, we've gone through this quite quickly. Well, we knew that we'd probably talk about a lot of things, and it's nice that we've grounded some form of topic, but you're gonna give me the hard part now, and I'm gonna go through the whole podcast and figure out the topics that we're talking about. But yeah, it's fascinating, and I think there are specific topics we want to talk about in these podcasts, especially in this new season that we go into it. There's a couple of topics that I definitely want to get into, and a new perspective, shine a new lens. Plus, I think it will help a lot of people out. Plus, maybe even we start chucking these videos on your YouTube channel as well. So we'll do it on both of ours. And that way, that whole consistent thing, at least it brings it up. There's consistent stuff going on, so
might get to that 3,000 followers.
Might get to the 3,000 followers. Maybe we can do the whole countdown here when we get to that 3,000 followers and do a whole podcast on it. But our interaction with social media is very interesting, though. I think we have a very similar perspective. We have those phases where we think, oh, yes, and then for me that disappears within like 10 seconds. I'm like, oh, can't be asked now.
I mean, if you're enjoying it, what's the harm?
There's no harm,
as long as it's not gripped us, because that's when the attachment comes. Is it has to be that number, or come on, I've got to get there. Like, why not just because it's nice though, and it's like, oh, people are interested. Like, how is that not a nice thing for us?
Yeah, it is.
So it can, as we've said with everything, and this is why balance is imbued in it all. Is it ego? Is it spirit? You know, is it consciousness, or is it for my gain, or am I just enjoying it? Constant.
Perfect. Right, we're gonna wrap it up there, guys.
Boom.
Yeah, so I've not said this in a while. Let me see if I can remember my script. This is going to be on Instagram as a preview. Instagram is still doing the 8-minute thing where you need 10,000 followers and then we can go unlimited. So 8-minute preview on Instagram. The video will be on YouTube. There's a link on my bio. I think there's also a link on Craig's bio to the YouTube channel. Do you have one?
I can put one on. My link is normally for the tickets for breathwork. So I'll bang it on my Instagram.
There's a thing you can have called Linktree, which will put. You click on Linktree and it opens up multiple channels of whatever social media you have. Okay. So we'll stick it on that, and that way people can go straight to the video. Please do support us. Obviously, this will also be on Spotify, iTunes, and all the usual audio platforms, and we will see you in the next the next Conscious Conversation podcast. Yeah, done.
Yes, we will. Oh, I think. What was I going to say then? I've got a retreat coming up in October.
Yeah.
Which is going to be, it's about creating your own reality. We've only got one space left, like it's sold out within a week, which was buzzing.
How many people have you got?
There's going to be 12 of us.
Right.
So we've got one space to go, and yeah, it's about creating your own reality. So if we're going into mindset, meditation, we're doing yoga every morning, bit of neem, cacao, a lot of health and cleansing, breath work, going into dreaming, lucid dreaming. We'll be doing outside water work, walks in nature. It's going to be cracking. So that's October. If anybody's interested, give me a shout. I'm looking at the camera now. We never do that, do we? Give me a shout. It's on my Instagram page, or drop me a message for that final space. And I think that's everything.
When's your next breathwork? That's the
25th of September.
Breathwork and cacao.
Breathwork ceremony. 4 hours. It's going to be a good
daytime, nighttime?
Evening. So we're doing 6 till 9. No, 5 till 9. Yeah,
I find with those breathwork, before we close off, I think the ones that are the deepest for me, and a lot of people that I talk to, are the ones that we do later on in the evening. Because in the morning you're waking up and then you go straight to your breathwork. You're either in that limbo stage or you're hyper awake. So I think the ones that are deeper for me are the ones that are later on in the evening, where I'm a bit more mellow, about to obviously knock out. So it's nice to do the breathwork and then just go to sleep straight after. And it does give you such a vivid experience when you're sleeping. Like I tend to have much stronger dreams and I knock out straight after.
There's a practice you can use actually to enhance your dreams and your dream state or out of body state by waking up and doing some breath work and like specific breath and like that. Yeah, it's cool stuff.
We'll probably do one on lucid dreaming, because I said Sonia wants to obviously go more into that, and that'll be a good podcast to do again. I think we briefly covered it.
Yeah, we've had a portion, didn't we, at some point?
Yeah, but we should go balls deep into one entire podcast of just lucid dreaming, and I think you'll probably take the reins of that one, and I'll just be asking you this and that, and maybe even do particular sadhans or tools that people can use to kind of get themselves in the lucid state. Because you've done this now for 5 years, journaled it?
Since I was 25, 26, so what, 8 years?
Oh wow, so you've journaled it for that long?
Yeah.
Jesus. So there's a lot of information that Craig will be able to present people, especially if you want to get down that route, because there's a lot of meaning that you can derive from your dream, and enhance your life through your dream life. But yeah, right, we're done.
Boom, lots of love.
We'll see you guys in the next podcast.
Stay conscious. Was that the tagline?
I think it was. Wow.